Over the past 9 years, I've gone from making goofy music videos with my friends that looked like this.
A full moon shining bright, edge of the water, we were feeling all right.
To filming documentaries about issues in the world I care about for HBO, Hulu, National Geographic, The Washington Post, and more. And I've made that progress as a documentarian primarily by investing my time strategically. So today I'm going to teach you how I think about improving as fast as possible as a filmmaker so that hopefully you can do it too. As we jump into things today, I got to provide some context for the speed element of this video because I just wouldn't be myself if I didn't say this. We all want to hear about how we can quickly get somewhere or something. That's why the get rich quick, 6-minute abs, or the newest lens that will transform your filmmaking, why all those narratives are so powerful. And my belief is that if you follow those stories, sure, you might get some results, but they will not be permanent. If you want to become a better documentary filmmaker, there are no shortcuts. No camera, no lens, no story template will get you to where you want to go. So if you are looking for that, I'll warn you right now that this video will be a disappointment. Just go ahead, smash that thumbs down button now. But if you are willing to put your head down and work at the craft day after day for decades in order to develop a mastery at the craft of documentary filmmaking, then this video is for you. Because when we're talking decades, if you can accelerate your learning curve even slightly right now at the beginning of your journey, it will compound over time in ways that you can't even imagine. So here are 3 ways that I've accelerated my learning curve. The first is to maximize your reps. My first job out of journalism school was as a video journalist at the LA Times, and I really had no idea what I was doing. I'd never been in a newsroom before. I knew my video making skills weren't that great, and a month or 2 into creating quick turn assignments for them, I also felt a misalignment between the short news segments I was making for them and the in-depth storytelling that I loved the most. However, even though I felt a misalignment and knew I wasn't gonna be at the LA Times for too long, I appreciated being there for one key reason, and that's reps. A newsroom gets you a ton of reps. I created stories day after day, from Comic-Con conventions to LA Galaxy soccer game tailgates to the retiring of a Goodyear blimp. I covered all aspects of daily life in Los Angeles. I would drive out in the morning, film in the afternoon, edit the next morning, and then the story would go live that afternoon or the next day. Each time my videos came out, I would cringe. I screwed up the lighting, the audio wasn't clean, the edit was choppy, but it didn't matter. I had a deadline and the piece had to come out. The wild thing about my experience at the LA Times was that in the day-to-day, it never really felt like I was making much progress. I just felt like I was a cog in the news machine cranking out shaky pieces, not pursuing the longer form artistic stories I knew I wanted to work on. But by the time I left the LA Times and I looked back on the first pieces I had made, I had developed so much more than I had ever imagined. That's why I believe that if you want to get started as a documentary filmmaker or you want to improve your filmmaking, focus on quantity over quality, at least for the first few years. And this isn't just about making progress as a filmmaker. There is scientific research conducted by Dr. Dean Keith Simonton, who has studied breakthrough thinkers and creators across disciplines. His studies confirm that the variable that affects the quality of one's ideas the most, regardless of the field, is the quantity of ideas one has. So how do we take action on this as a documentary filmmaker? Well, even if you don't work in a newsroom, there are ways for you to create the same newsroom constraints that maximize quantity like I experienced. 1, cover stories that are close to home. 2, cover stories that are newsworthy or you-worthy. In other words, something that excites you. Set strict deadlines and make sure you're held accountable to those deadlines by somebody. For me at the LA Times, I had an editor giving me deadlines. I had a boss. But even when I left the LA Times, before I went full-time freelance, I did a 6-month stint producing mini stories for YouTube every single week. They're actually still here on the channel if you want to go back into the archives. Creating this YouTube channel and producing content daily on all the other social platforms is a way for me to constantly practice and constantly improve. In that case, I didn't have an editor, but I committed to weekly videos and publicly announced it so that I felt accountable. Once you set deadlines and feel accountable, everything else falls into place. Deadlines eventually force you to let go of the paralyzing thought of what if this isn't good enough and just put it out. What I noticed is that when I was waiting around for someone to offer me a job, or when I didn't have any sort of pressure or deadline, I wasn't creating every day. So now I'm putting the expectation on myself that I have to find the story in every single day. And what that challenges me to do is become a better editor, to become a better shooter, to have a better story identifying mind that allows me to improve constantly. And the last newsroom condition that you can create is a feedback loop. Again, this is something I got working with editors and colleagues, that is some sort of response to your work. What did you do well? What can you improve for next time? So the message here is, if you're looking to speed up your learning curve, create the conditions for quantity. Even now that I am a decade into my career working on longer form docs, I still prioritize them making short pieces, playful pieces, clips just for social media that allow me to try something new, to get those reps. Baguette, how did you become so tasty?
I think it was my baker. I think my baker baked me very well.
I still look for opportunities to generate quantity because, as organizational psychologist Adam Grant says, it's widely assumed that there's a trade-off between quantity and quality. If you want to do better work, you have to do less of it. But this turns out to be false. In fact, when it comes to idea generation, quantity is the most predictable path to quality. Many people fail to achieve originality because they generate a few ideas and then obsess about refining them to perfection. Now let's assume that you are maximizing your reps. What is another way that you can speed up your learning curve as a documentary filmmaker? For me, it's all about working alongside someone who is better and more experienced than you, and getting curious while you're at it. In the filmmaking world, perhaps the best way to get started with this is working as a production assistant, maybe a second camera, or just asking if you can shadow someone whose work you admire for the day. Honestly, it's hard to emphasize how fast you can learn if you surround yourself with people who are better than you. Like, as much as you can learn here on YouTube or online masterclasses, there is nothing like being in the field with someone, watching and learning how they're making decisions on the fly based on the endless variables that are thrown our way. It makes the theoretical practical and can give you experience with new gear, new techniques, and new ways of working that you may never have been exposed to before, all while not having the pressure of a whole production in your hands. I love working on all parts of the documentary filmmaking practice, but when I was developing my trade skill for this industry, I chose to be a cinematographer. And while I was going from being a video journalist to a cinematographer, there was a lot I needed to learn. I didn't know how to use cinema cameras. I felt very uncomfortable using external lights. I didn't know what terms like timecode and V-mount batteries were. But thankfully at that time, and we're talking like 5 years ago, I met a cinematographer named Mike Abella and had the opportunity to assist him and be his second camera. And watching Mike cover a scene, helping him set up gears for interview, or seeing him hustle his ass off during a long day of filming, I learned more in a single day with him than in months of college classes. That's a testament not only to Mike's skill, but also how generous he was with helping me learn. Because there's no doubt that when I started assisting Mike, I was more of a hassle than I was a help. I didn't know how to set up his C-stands or anything like that. But Mike was patient, and most importantly, he was generous with his knowledge. Unfortunately, there are a lot of filmmakers out there who are selfish with what they know. They view the world with a scarcity mindset, thinking that your success comes at their expense. But Mike has a mindset of abundance. He was willing to help and teach with a belief that there's enough opportunity out there for everyone. If you have the opportunity to assist someone who has that mindset, who is generous and wants to help you, the best thing that you can do is not only do it, but be curious, ask questions. Don't be the PA who sits on their phone all day in the corner. Don't be the second camera person whose ego is flaring up, thinking that they would have made a better and different decision if only they were in charge. No, be a student of the game. Every time I work with Mike, still today, I ask tons of questions. Why'd you make that decision? How did you rig that up? What equipment are you using? And from those questions, I learn not only the how of Mike's process, but the why. And that's when you can start to really make some progress with your filmmaking. The final thing that has really helped me accelerate my learning and development as a documentary filmmaker is what I'll call community and craft intensives. I'm creating that esoteric name as a catch-all for fellowships, workshops, grants, and camps. Essentially short-term experiences where you work on your craft and at the same time meet other people passionate about the same things that you are. Since 2017, I've done an IDEO Storytelling Fellowship, a National Geographic grant, which got me into the National Geographic Explorer community, the Unleash Innovation Lab, the Missouri Photo Workshop, the Jackson Wild Media Lab, the Footprints Running Camp, and more. And even though most of these were only a week-long experience, they have had an outsized impact on my development. There are two reasons for this. The first is that CCIs, as I'll call them, Community and Craft Intensives, give you time and space to focus 100% of your energy on developing your craft or learning about a particular subject matter. For that week, you're not worrying about emails or the endless distractions of everyday life. You and everyone else shows up with the intention of all in focus. And with that focus comes a heightened awareness and presence that allows you to learn and improve. For example, in 2020, I participated in the Missouri Photo Workshop, which is a week-long documentary photography intensive. Each year at the Missouri Photo Workshop, 40 photographers come to a town in Missouri to tell a community story. It's focused on slow, nuanced, and immersive work. Because I did it in 2020, COVID prevented us from traveling to Missouri, so we all covered stories in our hometowns. And I'll make a separate video about that experience, but for now, I'll just say that I learned so much in that 1 week. And a big part of it is because I had 1 week of locked-in focus on immersing myself in a story, taking intimate photos, and piecing together a 12-image story. Now, even though I know that the practice of photography is such a great tool for enhancing my filmmaking, I hardly ever get to focus on it. But applying for, getting accepted, and participating in the Missouri Photo Workshop gave me that space, time, and permission to dive deep for a week in a way I never had before. And that's one of the reasons I got so much out of it. But the other reason that CCIs have helped me progress so quickly is because they have helped me build friendships. This is the biggest reason I value them. Because honestly, some of them have not delivered such top quality content learning. However, even in those circumstances, I've met some of my closest friends and collaborators. At the CCIs I've been to, I've met people who I call and text every week, people who I send rough drafts to, people who I brainstorm ideas with, people who hire me and who I get to hire, people who I ask questions about rates and ethics to, people who I just hang out with. In the sometimes lonely world of being a freelancer, I just can't overemphasize how valuable it is to build some sort of community. And CCIs, especially ones that are in-person experiences, are a great way to do that. All of these strategies I've shared today are ways that I have sped up my learning curve to get to where I am today. And focusing on quantity, learning from others who are better than me, and applying to CCIs are still principles that guide how I invest my time. And I have no doubt that if you orient some of your energy in the direction of those, you will experience the same thing. If you enjoyed this video, check out this one I recently made on 20 filmmaking tips in 12 minutes for your first documentary. Thanks for watching. Until next week, go out and tell some stories.